Or just doing it for
the sake of
for
we didn't follow the instruction. We did, but it was impossible to.
It's the 16th of August 2012. Outside the Lonmin platinum mine in Marikana in South Africa, 112 striking miners are shot down by police. 34 die. Like many other South Africans, the shooting shook me to the core. Events like this took me back to the massacres of apartheid. Sharpeville 1960, Soweto 1976. Killings like these led South Africans to support Nelson Mandela and his struggle for freedom. But today, these miners are being shot at by our new government to ensure that it's business as usual. We could see that lives were now being sacrificed for money, and that the young democracy we had so much hope for was under threat.
This is not a day to apportion blame. It is a day for us to mourn together as a nation. It is also a day to start rebuilding and healing.
The SAPS did all in its power to avert a situation such as this. And the police members had to employ force to protect themselves from the charging group. This is no time for blaming. This is no time for finger pointing. It is a time for us to mourn the sad and dark moment we experience as a country.
The Marikana Commission of Inquiry has sat for over a year. South Africans watch in a state of shock. Have the police been honest in their account? No, they have not. The big question remains: who sanctioned the order to use live ammunition against the strikers?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Dumisa Nsebeza. I appear for the following families: Mgcineni Noki, Mongezeleli Nteneja, Bongani Nqongophele, Cebisile Yawa, Jackson Lehupa, Semi Chokanis, David Fezile Saphendu, Thobisile Zibambele, Henry Mvuyisi Phato, Julius Topoti Mangcodwa, Mzukisi Sombeta, Patrick Akona Jijase, Babalo Mchazi, Mafolisi
Good morning, it's Friday 10th of August 2012. Allegedly illegal gathering by rock drill operators.
It's 6 days before the massacre. The mining company, Lonmin, is filming the miners as they gather outside the mine. A Lonmin security guard reports everything he sees.
Group allegedly wants to march to the LPD building to speak to management with regards to salary and certain packages. Awaiting SAPs and backup to see if we can stop the crowd. Also awaiting feedback from senior management with regards to, will we let the crowd to march to LPD or will we try to stop the crowd?
A crowd of rock drillers meet and march to the Lonmin management office. They believe the official majority union, the National Union of Mineworkers, are in the pockets of management, and so they've decided to take matters into their own hands. They are joined by workers from a competing union.
Sicomplaina ngemali yama-LGO encane, 4,000. Sathi at least make simuvisele imali ngoba umsebenzi sobenzayo ukopha later. Kodwa ke okubalulekileyo siyamazi umqeshi akazuba nayo le mali straight. Enye nenye nayo sobonisana nayo because sinemali encane kakhulu. Sabe sinenjongo uba at least bifikile ku-7,000. Xa sifika apho between basifike sisiduzane kusivalele security.
Only rubber rounds, low density rubber rounds, no SSG, no AAA. All of us declared. Only rubber hoor.
Abese kuphinda kufika security zifake i-data tape about kusuka kwindawo esikuyo ukuya kudata tape yabe yanqomba by 15 meters siphume sabayi-5 sathi asiyi jathi ukufika nawo uba sifuna ntoni. Wathi why nilapha ngestrike sona ngamaphepha simphendule egama elithi no thina asifundanga njengoba sisi-LDO because of what asifundanga. Now nangoku awuzusixelela ngeefayile zamaphepha uba masifunde apha thina asifundanga into ebhalwe asiyazi.
Omnyama usebenza kabuhlungu usebenzela ubukhoboka toti kufumaniseke utatakho uyosebenza bengumtshini boy uyodayofa okanye goduke engulo mtshini boy nawe uzotyiwa indlala pha kwenu ubone bayikhona. Mandiyeke lento bendiyenza noba bungangabe bufunda bomama ndiyeke esisikolo ndihambe ndiyoba ngumtshini boy pha la kwezanto zamayini uphathwe ngunyana wala mntu ebephethe utatakho.
The average take-home pay of rock drillers is 5,000 South African rand. the equivalent of $500. This condemns them to poverty, they say. Mining companies like Lonmin view higher wages as the biggest threat to the continued health of the business. Lonmin is a British company which started drilling for platinum in South Africa 30 years ago. It employs 28,000 people, exporting the world's most precious metal out of the country and around the globe. The company has spent large sums of money on a massive program of expansion, leaving it financially vulnerable. The prospect of a long strike was the last thing they wanted.
We experienced a group of workers who started marching from the Wonderkop area towards this place, which we call LPD. These are the people who define mining. If they don't drill, there's no mining. So if they are not at work, it becomes obvious. They marched until the four-way junction, which is across the building here. And at that point, obviously, that's when the security engaged them. And at no point did this group of employees demonstrate they had anything to present.
A couple of months previously, Lonmin had met directly with that same strike committee to discuss their grievances. Yet now they wouldn't talk to them. Why?
The story of the Marikana massacre would be incomplete without a close look at the involvement of Cyril Ramaphosa. I had watched him with admiration as he built the largest trade union the country had ever seen, the National Union of Mineworkers. Under Cyril's leadership, NUM saw the miners join the fight against apartheid, and I took my place marching side by side behind their banner.
It must be remembered that it was the mining industry, and specifically the Chamber of Mines, which pioneered the most oppressive features of apartheid South Africa.
Viva Comrade Sisulu, viva! Viva! Viva Comrade Mutlatsi, viva! Viva!
Mine workers have always had to put up with harsh living and working conditions. Cyril Ramaphosa was determined to change this. Under his leadership, workers were led into mass strikes and direct confrontation with the white mine owners. He was, for me, a vital and important person in the birth of the new South Africa.
There's no such thing as a liberal bourgeois. They are all the same. They use fascist methods to destroy workers' lives.
He soon became a leading member of the African National Congress, and from this position joined the black economic elite. Ramaphosa, who once saw South Africa's working class as a force to bring about change, now found himself on the other side of the table. At the time of the massacre, he was a board member of Lonmin.
We've gone through our waves of strikes, and we always have strikes because we have such a robust democratic system that allows workers to express themselves. And people should never be alarmed. This is the South African way, and we need to accept that. Workers will voice their dissatisfaction through withdrawing their labor. What we are against is that quite a number of those strikes have tended to turn violent. That is one behavior pattern that we need to get out of our system.
Ironically, the National Union of Mineworkers, NUM, the powerful union which Cyril Ramaphosa once led, was still the majority union inside the mines. But in the lead-up to the Lonmin strike, NUM had refused to address the low wages of their members. And when Lonmin management told the workers that they would only negotiate through the majority union, the workers decided to go back to NUM's office.
About 3,000 workers, strikers, march down to the NUM office. The people who are in the NUM offices, and there are probably about 30 branch officials and shop stewards, they'd been advised by the Lonmin security that the march was on its way, and if they didn't want to meet the march, then they should lock the building down and simply go home.
Into yasidinayo singabasebenzi beLonmin bubumenemene beunion esayikhethayo yentando yesininzi sadinwa ke iyo sabona ukuba asiyifumani imfuno zethu phofu ke imfuno yemali esiyifuna saqonda masiziyele singabasebenzi beLonmin.
The president or the general secretary of the local NUM branch, I forget which, decided that he would hand out weapons to each of the 30 people who were there. And they handed out pangas and spears, but he also handed out at least one gun.
Ininzi lethu beli under NUM, even me, bendiku NUM. Now, sizithathe idivision mama size straight kumqeshi yasokola. Nina nisokoli because niseze office. Xa siduze nokufika because sihamba siyimash but asiphethe even lutho sihamba siso. E-office sajikela ngemva zasihlangabeza. Savulela ngembumbulo sasidubula. Singakakhulu.
They were shot at from the offices of the NUM. And in fact, for a long time thereafter, it was not denied that 2 employees were shot at that stage.
Sibaleka sibheke phi lapha erenkini ematex. If usibaleka ngeke ngabona omunye umtsha waphansi ngitshela ukuthi maybe ushayiwe, ngaye ngathena ngabuya kule mbhobo lephuma ku stop nonsense. Ngithena ngisahamba emva kwale row, kune row ekhona lapha enkompolo. Ngithengiswa ngeswa kuyabanda la emuva la. Ngeke ngazama ukubaleka. Ngawacela namadoda bengibaleka kunye na ngatshela amadoda sengishayiwe ngithutshuliwe manje.
The National Union of Mineworkers denies any of their members attacked workers and insist that their branch leadership were acting in self-defense.
NUM would not encourage any sort of that, but NUM would understand if its people believe that they are under threat to their lives and our office under threat, that they will, at the spark of the moment, decide to take a stand. As I've said that as an NUM, we believe that those people in that circumstances found themselves and we don't condemn what they did.
In many respects, that was a complete turning point because up until that point, there'd been very little violence. I'm not saying there wasn't any violence. People say there was a bit of intimidation. I really don't know about it. But no one was being killed.
Sibalekile ke ngosikhathi. Siphinda dibana foot in the side here. A grounding after izankomo. So planning ntoni is bad siyohlala entabeni because napha stadium sihleli khona ngesazi masohlala entabeni intaba yona ayixoxisi ngekanoma ngubani.
11/08/2012.
Every time the miners gather, the Lonmin security guard keeps a keen eye on them.
After a shooting incident of 2 people allegedly from Korea area, the situation is fairly calm at this stage. No direct threat to security.
As a reaction to NUM shooting at their own members, the conflict grows. Lonmin rock drillers from the nearby Korea shaft join the strike in numbers. They belong to the competing union, the Association of Construction and Mineworkers Union, UMCU. UMCU's leader, Joseph Mutunjwa, like Ramaphosa 20 years before him, is fighting the system and believes NUM has become far too close to mine management and government. He soon becomes an important player in the unfolding events at Marikana.
Comrade, when we voted 1994, we thought that the working class is liberated. The only thing that we benefited is to change the administration which was run by the white collar. Then is our challenge now, ukuthi thina masesibona ukuthi sesizoyithola inkululeko sizobona ngokushintsha isystem.
On the 12th, they decide that they're going to go back to the NUM offices. This time, I think that they're in fear and that they take their own course of action. And they are stopped, really, by Lonmin security guards. Now, not much is known of what happened on that day. I mean, there is a suggestion that these guards, who I have to say are poorly paid, ordinary black working class people who are sent out to confront on behalf of this multinational firm of exploiters the demonstration that's coming to them. But whatever happened, 2 guards were killed, and one of them in particular was burned to a cinder.
I, therefore, have placed the remaining years of my life in your hands.
Cyril Ramaphosa was close to Nelson Mandela. We thought he would succeed the Mandela presidency. After the massacre, I was hoping to have an honest discussion about what really took place at Marikana. But he quickly made it clear that he would speak only in general terms until appearing before the commission.
We're not the first country to have a wave of strikes. Let's just get that clear. Many countries, both middle-income countries, low-income countries, and your high-income countries, have been through waves of strikes. And many of those strikes in some countries have even toppled governments.
You know, it wasn't as if the 16th was a day isolated from context. You have to look back to the Monday before that Thursday, when a group of 150 to 200 miners went from that copy to Korea 3 mine, where they heard there were still some miners working and they wanted to tell them to down tools. Intimidation, solidarity, you can call it what you want. They were turned back by the security of the mine, who told them, go back with that route. They went back with that route. Halfway back to that copy, they were met by a cordon of police. Unusually, led by the Deputy Commissioner for the Northwest, General Mpembe.
Kodwa sinenkinga, inkinga yethu yilezi zinto eniziphethe azikho emthethweni. Manje mayibeke nifuna kuhamba ngiyoqala umuntu ngamunye anginikeze lezi zinto. Hop, lalelani ke, lalelani. Lo into lothi lacela lapha kanina.
Sinacela lokuhamba lapho londawo tingahlaba. Singafuna siyalondela nawo. Njengalo nje sinacela kunayilwile. Thina amahlala lapho londawo tingahlala. Kalomgqibelo. Thina buyile lapho londawo kathina. Labantu ama-security kalomine. Enafikile dubula thina nalabantu kalonawo. Balabulala two muntu lapha kathina. Yana londawo thina phathile lo into lo. Thina ilwile nalo muntu.
Yebo baba.
Number one. Nina maphoyisa straight. Nina maphoyisa straight. Thina khona lapha ka-road me. Thina lungisa lo marika thina lapha road me. Thina chopha phasi mgodi. Thina iyilwa nalo munye moto. Thina khona lo into lo thina funa lungisa.
And you then begin to understand the standpoint of those employees. They say, by the way, we have no issue with you as the police. Now, that's very fundamental. It's like they want to remind everybody, including the police, that in a democracy, workers negotiate with the employers. The police should not be this shield between employees' rights and employers' obligations. The very interesting part about it is when the negotiation between General Mpembe and some of the worker leaders, including Tsineni Nok, the so-called man in the green blanket, Mambush. Now, when it is clear that the employees have put their position, look, if you want to disarm us, it's okay, but you need to escort us from here to the mountain.
Nihambe nathi mina ngokuba thina asinawulwa baba asilwi
niyosinikeza zona kuphi laphi entabeni
sisonke
General Mpembe reaches a stage where he says, now let me get you straight. Are you saying if we escort you to the mountain, when you get there, you'll hand over the weapons to us? And they say yes. And at that point, he gets a telephone call.
The police have given them ample time.
In fact, when one looks at that clip, this attitude is radical before and after that phone call.
Hey, sithi baba,
ngifuna imkhonto. Ngifuna imkhonto. Phela yonke into manje mangingatholi imkhonto ngeke ngimdedele. Ngiyakaunta ke. Ngiyakaunta.
They go into their song and they just get up and they go. And again, to his credit, at that point, General Mpembe doesn't say, shoot these buggers. He allows them. They march and they simply provide a corridor.
This group of miners were walking slowly, deliberately. From the video footage you see, They don't seem to pose any threat. Suddenly, you see tear gas being fired by one of the Nyalas, some shots fired. They get ignored. They just keep going. And there's a line of police jogging alongside them on the one side. There's armored vehicles. Keeps going. Another volley of shots and tear gas, and the miners crack and break.
As the people are beginning to run, do you agree that from what we see, people start running around after the stun grenades have been thrown and exploded? It's only then that people start running around.
Correct, Chairperson. None of the commanders admit to having given an instruction. In fact, somebody, you told us, alleged that you had given the instruction, and you were quite emphatic that that was not true. But none of the commanders gave the order according to the instructions, according to the information that you have. So the whole thing is very puzzling, isn't it?
And in that chaos, 3 miners are killed. One of whom seems to have been stabbed to death. And it's unclear who caused that death, in what circumstances. Also, 2 cops get caught up and get killed.
Two strikers were not killed at the scene. 2 strikers were killed perhaps 300 meters, another 800 meters from that scene. My interpretation is that these 2 strikers were fleeing and running away from the scene and were pursued by police officers. One in particular, I believe that when he was perhaps 800 meters away from the scene and was running through a river and up the bank on the other side, I believe he was targeted by a police officer and was shot, and I describe that as being an execution.
People took cell phone pictures of the dead police, and this circulated through all police circles. Every single province got these. 2 policemen had been killed. Now, to be realistic, we know that cops have a kind of ironclad rule. You take us out, we're going to take you out. You don't get away with killing policemen. That's police forces across the world, actually.
It's 2 days before the massacre. Already a total of 9 people have been killed, with the latest, a NUM official being marked by a cow's skull, the sign of a traitor. Conflict between the strikers and NUM goes from bad to worse.
It worries us more as to what is the motive, because no organization worth its salt can embark on this barbaric way of raising issues. And we believe that the partners know that NUM will never be involved in this kind of a barbaric way of dealing with issues.
Lonmin begins its campaign of pinning responsibility for the violence on the striking miners.
We did not anticipate this type of violence, and I don't think any organization in this country could ever anticipate this type of violence, because it's not normal. So that's why we're looking and searching and using the police, particularly the crime intelligence, to understand the root cause of the situation.
Ronnie Casseroles joined the fight against apartheid in the 1960s, following the Sharpeville massacre. He sat on the National Executive Committee of the ANC for 20 years and was considered by the white minority regime as one of their most dangerous opponents.
Why the use of police force armed to the teeth against 2,000-3,000 miners who were not occupying mining property or territory, were not occupying any strategic point, were not blocking the national highway or any minor road. They were seated at a distance from any key point.
The High Police visibility and presence will remain until the situation is completely stable.
And currently we are seeing sort of a standoff here between police and mine workers. What are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, this is part of our phased approach in terms of discussing and negotiating with the protesters, and that's the process that we're busy with at this stage.
I'm not at all sure why they brought in a hostage negotiator to try and negotiate with 3,000 strikers. It does seem bizarre, particularly as the strikers who always said, we want to negotiate, but we want to negotiate with management.
They are coming.
Okay, they're coming forward. We've got 5 people coming forward.
They are coming, Colonel.
Okay. Talk to them and tell them, please, they must leave any weapons there. We're going to talk without weapons. It's our promise, and nothing will happen to them. It's a promise.
The National Police Commissioner ordered Lonmin to produce photographs of the demonstrators. She then ordered Lonmin to identify the ringleaders.
I need to indicate that the management did assist me to identify some of the strikers, and the others said that they will also continue to assist me to identify them from the photos.
But what is clear is that the person that they would have identified, because he was the main negotiator, is Mr. Noki, the man in the green blanket. What we know about Mr. Noki is that he has 14 bullet holes in him. He is dead.
Well, we can't hear, that's the problem. That's the problem. Because he doesn't hear.
Can I move forward? Can I move forward?
Okay, stop, Kali. He's asking, can you turn the motor off so we can talk? We need to tell him we cannot.
We cannot.
To be heard over the noise of the running engine, strike leader Mambush climbs onto the armoured vehicle to talk to the police hostage negotiator.
Thank him.
Macintosh, what's your name? Kamala.
Okay. He's saying he's tired.
Bana silwi sihleli. Kaze funa umqatsheze kurezo siphendula ngemali esifunayo. Kuphela. Sikwazi futhi emsebenzini. Kodwa engakasiphendula imali esifunayo. Asizisuka apha. Singazususwa ngabo lamaphoyisa lapha.
But Lonmin continued to refuse to meet the strikers. What happened next was only discovered a year into the commission, when the police were ordered to hand over files that they had hidden. It is a transcript of a conversation that took place 2 days before the massacre between an executive of Lonmin and the Provincial Commissioner of Police. It reveals the state and Lonmin putting their heads together on how to break the strike before it spread to other mines.
we need to act such that we kill this thing.
Immediately, yes.
When tomorrow we have to move in, if today we do not find cooperation in these people, we need to move in such that we kill it.
So I agree with you, Commissioner. If we can arrest these people, because the longer it goes, it is giving all the other opportunists to comment and seize the opportunity, and then it gets out of control.
That is it.
So I think yes. Let tomorrow be the D-Day where we issue the ultimatum and say, if you do not show up for work, sorry, that is it.
Right, it is 8 minutes after 8. We say good morning to you. Welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa. I'm going to start with the National Union of Mineworkers president who's here with me in studio, Senzeni Zogwana. A very good morning to you, sir. I thank you for your time.
Morning, Kolani.
In our Pretoria studios, we are joined there by Mr. Bernard Mokoena. He is Executive Vice President at Lonmin. Mr. Mokoena, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Also, I'm joined here in the studio by Joseph Matunjwa. He is the president of AMCU. A very good morning to you, Mr. Matunjwa.
As they were marching to gather at the stadium, guys came out of the offices of NUM, fired at the workers.
There was no firing at anybody on Friday. This further confirms my view that AMCU was behind the march. The fact that...
One way of achieving that is if the leaders of the two the unions come together, go there publicly together and say, okay, for now, let's go back to work.
We are ready. Is the car outside ready to take us there?
Is that too difficult? These are difficult times.
I'm saying, Kolani.
Mr. Mokoena?
Yes, Kolani, our position as management is as follows. We agree people must be disarmed. We want to meet the structures of the unions to discuss any grievance or concern in the most civilized manner, without pangas and without guns. We can do it now. We can do it as soon as possible.
We are ready. Let's go then. Let's go.
Right.
Let's go to that mountain.
Is that an agreement?
During a radio interview, the leaders of the trade unions agree on air to address the miners at the mountain. Lonmin's Bernard Mokoena remains silent about whether he will join them.
On the drive towards Marikana, I thought I'd reached it. I'd never been there before. I thought I'd reached it because there were all these armored vehicles, police armored vehicles and private security vehicles with fully dressed tactical guys in uniforms I'd never seen, military gear, no policing gear. It was all automatic, semi-automatic rifles, the R5s and R6s. And I stopped there thinking I'd reached the kind of front line of the police, but they were all eating and having a pee and, the passing time. So I kept going and eventually got to the right spot. And it was clear that this thing was going to be a huge conflict.
Miners shut down so Ramaphosa takes 6.
One person who commanded the respect of all parties and who might have been able to resolve the conflict was Cyril Ramaphosa, because the former mine worker leader is now one of the most influential politicians inside the ruling party. Did it ever cross your mind to, go to the mountain, to speak to the workers?
I prefer not to answer that one, because if I ever go to give evidence, I'll have to deal with things like that.
Email communication was uncovered at the commission, showing Cyril Ramaphosa energetically lobbying government ministers to increase police presence and pressing for action to be taken against the miners.
Chairperson, we have in our possession emails that were being exchanged between the mine management, the government, the Minister of Minerals and Energy, which talk about discussions with the Minister of Police, at the center of which is a gentleman called Cyril Ramaphosa.
Cyril Ramaphosa writes about the discussions he had with the Minister of Mining, Susan Shabangu.
She agrees that what we are going through is not a labor dispute, but a criminal act. She is going into cabinet and will brief the president as well and get the Minister of Police, Natim Tetwa, to act in a more pointed way. Let's just keep the pressure on them to act correctly.
I'm interrupting you, but what is the date of that email that you...
It is the 15th of August, 2:58, exactly 24 hours before the people were mowed down at that mountain. Cyril Ramaphosa advised that what was taking place are plainly, I'm quoting now, dastardly criminal and must be characterized as such. In line with this characterization, there needs to be concomitant action to address this situation. That at the heart of this was the toxic collusion between the SAPS and Lonmin at the direct level. At a much broader level, it can be called a collusion between the state and capital.
Black people who get into white-owned companies through the Black economic empowerment process then get into a system, one which is very reluctant to change, and two, which they don't own completely and which they don't control. So at best what they do, or what we do, is to be advocates.
After the radio broadcast, Joseph Matunjwa, the leader of UMCA, arrives at the mountain with the NUM leadership in an attempt to persuade the workers to return to work, on the basis of a commitment made on air by Lonmin management that they were now willing to talk.
Joseph Matunjwa told me that he confidently expected that when he arrived that there would be a meeting between himself, Mr. Zakwana, and the Lonmin management. Instead, what he found was General Mpembe. He asked, would the trade union leaders go up to the mountain to speak to the strikers and to say, leave your arms there, leave the mountain, just leave. A small delegation from NUM went first, and they went in an armored truck. And the armored truck approached the mountain, and the strikers were told that inside the truck was the president of the National Union of Mineworkers, and that he wasn't getting out of the truck. It was clear from the reception that they simply didn't want him. They did not want him there. Well, Joseph had a much better reception. Again, he was not allowed by the police to get out of the armored truck.
To get into the hard body, and then just in front of them, they stand there. No, what we inside.
No, what we simply say, you can come with your nyala, but we'll just walk. On our own, we just go and talk to them.
No. The general decision was no.
These are human beings. These are human beings.
Sisa ukhokhela ku. Sithema simxelela kumqashi kuba uma abasebenzi bazawufinyelela ukuya empangelweni lezi khalo zabo okanye lezinto ezitya umusi uzawuthethisana nenyunyani yabo nangestructure sabo abasikhethileyo de ukuba lezinto nizifunayo zifinyelelelwe kuzo.
He made headway, and the strikers came to him and said, look, it's late in the day, it's getting dark. What we'd like you to do is to come back at 9 o'clock in the morning. But more significantly, he was telling them that if they were to leave the mountain, then management would address their grievances. In other words, they'll at least speak to them. So he went back and he reported that both to the police and to the Lonmin management. And in fact, what Joseph Matunja says is that they were really optimistic. I mean, General Mpembe, he said, in fact, saluted him and said, well done. And one of the other Lonmin managers said, yes, congratulations, maybe we can do that. And so there was a sort of chink. There was a light there. There was something that could be developed.
Remember that we said our intention is to disarm the people, and our intention is to make sure the people that they leave that illegal gathering area where they are, and that is what we will do today. And I said to you, we wish that we will do that still amicable, meaning we will ask them to leave. But then, I don't want to explain to you if they don't, what then. What I told you is, today we are ending this matter.
Well, we have statements from the National Commissioner and the Provincial Commissioner which make clear that the night before, the Provincial Commissioner had informed the National Commissioner that if SAPS could not persuade the strikers to lay down their weapons and leave the Kopi by negotiations, she would issue an instruction for the strikers to be dispersed. After deliberations, the meeting endorsed the proposal to disarm the protesting masses and further indicated that additional resources must be made available upon needs identification by the Provincial Commissioner Northwest.
The most foreboding indication of the intentions of those who placed an order for 4 mortuary vans from the morgue. What else are you anticipating? It's a statement of anticipation of what is going to happen.
Can we now please move on to the morning of 16 August 2012?
We then requested one of the security to call Mr. Kwadi and to advise him that we have arrived. As we were inside the office, he said he doesn't have a good news for us. He was referring to the commitment made by the management that once the workers renounce violence, leave arms, and return back to work peacefully, the management we will engage to their grievances.
We now know that this was a joint operation between Lonmin and the police, that Lonmin was completely integrated into the police strategy and assisted the police strategy. It provided a senior executive to be part of the police team. They briefed the police officers and senior generals at least once every day. They provided helicopters and went out on surveillance expeditions with the police. They provided detention facilities. And at the very end of the day, after all the killings were done, they provided the Lonmin game farm for the debriefing.
Are we to believe that even Major General Pierre had not cleared this with her principal, the Minister of Police?
Did you make a telephone call to the minister reporting to him the killings that had taken place at Marikana on the 13th of August 2012? Do you remember me asking you that question?
You've asked me a lot of questions. It could have been one of those.
General, this is a simple question. Are you suggesting that you do not remember, for a fact, you do not remember me asking you that question?
I have had a number of questions from you, and that could have been one of those.
Killings on such a large scale, would that have been a matter of concern to your minister?
I said yes.
If it was or would have been, what, if anything, did the minister do?
I have already given my response to this one. As a political leader, he gives us leadership in that space and support. If I have failed maybe to answer in a manner that is appreciated, maybe I'm short of answering your question.
16 ekuseni mazifikayo ezihiphu zifika zigcwalisa zangaziluhlu konke zihiphu ziveni zitruck kube netruck futhi ebuyileyo eyi-1 yafika ema ngapho kala private hambe kapha eyamajoni itruck inamajoni alapha ngasemva layishiwe futhi emaningi wona kakhulu.
By mid-morning, it had become clear to the miners that Lonmin had gone back on their commitment to talk to them.
Sukela namhlanje kuya phambili iLonmin ayisoze nayo umuntu ngaphandle kwethu. Umqeshi le ayithethayo into isengamampunge ngoba thina besidinga bakulo-9 uzobe yena uza ngokwakhe usicela basebenzi the 12,500 ndinayo kodwa ke ngokuyabonakala uba yena uzicela basebenzi izinja zakhe asiyi emsebenzini ukuba ngaba la madoda aphuma kwindawo ngendawo thola amnyama azibiza ngoba ngamapolisa anesigqiba zobuya abantu abamnyama bafanayo eqhathwa ngamabhulu namangesi bamakazobuya nje kodwa akekho amabhulu imusyawo apho. Sinayifuna khathala kaloku ima kwayena lapho laba thina khathalela ngosala batshele thina funa hamba lapha kayena nathina kuthi thina phelisana kuthi kanjani wena ngubani wena sihlala konjalo thina khona noko la maphoyisa noko thina futhi yena qathi yena nosikhethi yena la maphoyisa bhetele la tshaya thina tlahamba asikhathi thina tilahlala bese maphayisa tinahamba lapha ngayena sinabuka kanjani tlasiyenza benzeke lahlala wani kuthi amakuza ikona khula bakuhlatshela wani.
The question I ask you is this. The decision that you say you took to implement stage 3, was that decision taken because there had been an escalation? Or was it taken even though there hadn't been an escalation? That's the question. What's the answer?
Chairperson, according to paragraph 23, no escalation. But what...
Fine. So your answer is the decision to implement stage 3, which you say you took and conveyed to the provincial commissioner, was taken not because of escalation, but just the fact that even though there wasn't escalation.
The life of a black person in Africa is so cheap. Bayosibulala, basigqibe, baphinde futhi bathola abanye, babafake, bababhadale lemivuzo engenzi into empilweni zomuntu omnyama. Okungukuthi siyobe sihlulekile, kodwa amakapitali yoba yiwona winayo. Kodwa sinendlela esenikhombisa yona ukuthi nayo indlela kufanele kuhanjwe ngayo. Siyaqala-ke bafowethu, odadewethu, bodada, ndiyaguqa ngedolo, ndiza kuni ngingento yalutho. Ndithi masivikele leli gazi, i-NUM esavumelene nomqashi ukuba maliphalale. Asifuni igazi elizophalala, kodwa sifuna izinkinga zenu nemivuzo yenu mayitholakale, comrade.
I still remember vividly the face of those workers. I still remember my words I said. When Xolani Mkambi of ETV asked me, what now? I said, all this is in God's hands. I'm a mortal man. Those were my words. I'm a mortal man. God.
Immediately following Joseph Mutunjwa's passionate plea, over 1,000 miners decided to leave the mountain and make their way home.
We have been in negotiations with this gathering for quite a few days. And part of that was that we can reach an amicable solution for them to drop their weapons and disperse. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem as if negotiations have proven successful, and the South African Police Service is going to have to go over to a tactical phase to ensure that we take weapons away from those gathered here. For that, I need all the media behind our vehicles.
Yasuki hippie bipa, a coaching raise wire, ukushka, I figure paya pela straight, ne hippie bipa yes bin, ya figure nale generally, that raise wire, ye can now get upon, stay my papans, like Zabia Pangas by, sat no, sia vale, comrade, Masiambe.
Wayethethile lonto umamboshi watsho wathi basebenzi kungcono sihambe kule ndawo awalantu kakhupha imipu masemkeni kule ndawo kodwa singabalekile ngoba senza nganto la madoda sizitholele ingoma yethu toti sidoda siyofika kwindawo zethu zokuhlala nyani yatsho ingoma bantu bahamba
Ulapho sithe masiya phaa duze ne-opposite nesibaya sabe sifike sivala kwezipho.
ukufa into endandiyijongile ngoku ndandibona uba nyhani ngoku ndiyafa qha ndifa ndingenzanga nto fe ndingayolelanga noyolela ekhaya kwaye kukufa endandijongene naye bona uba ndifela imali.
15 to 20 minutes after the initial shooting, when all the commanders should have said, "What? You've shot how many people? Stand down. Stand down." They went and carried on hunting down people for 20 minutes. When I saw what the Commission and the police call Scene 2, which is the small copy several hundred meters away from the stuff we saw on television, it was clear that this was nothing like what had happened at the first scene.
Into eyenzekayo abantu babethi kwexesha baxhome izandla bacela uxolo badutyulwe.
We know from the examination of the scene by forensic officers that, for example, they found cartridges on tops of the rocks. We know that they found dead bodies at the bottom of the rocks. Now, I would conclude there's a strong possibility that officers stood and shot people who were at the bottom of the rock. I mean, you're talking at a distance of perhaps only 2, 3, 4 meters.
The police seemed to stick to their self-defense story. They kept repeating the same thing, even though it was blindingly obvious, and you had dozens of witnesses talking about people trying to surrender, being killed, repeatedly shot as they were trying to surrender, not just once, coming up 2, 3 times with their hands, shot repeatedly.
Another one. Okay, forward! Forward! Clap! Yo! Clap! Ngibone vele lilamsaka mlamu. There's a muti there. Yeah. All over the boat. Yeah. Leave it. Yeah, but that's a muti shit. Yeah. Doesn't work here, Baba. Come on. Stand up, Just stay forward. Hey, we are going forward. Stay forward. I want to run circle. Long, ready position, boss.
Sifune mali safaze hlupeko sifune mali safaze hlupeko sifune mali yephi mali safaze hlupeko sifune mali
Let us take note of the fact that whatever happened represents the best of responsible policing. You did what you did because you were being responsible. You were making sure that you continue to live your oath of ensuring that South Africans are safe and that you equally are a citizen of this country and safety starts with you.
But who looked out for the safety of our lowly paid miners? Surely it should have been those who worked so tirelessly for our struggle for freedom. Those who now hold the reins of political power.
It is the time to point finger, in the first place, to point finger at those whose fingers pulled the trigger. But the foot soldiers, what about those who pull the strings, who give the orders, and who are they? Tell me, who are they? Minister of Police? President? He's got to answer. This is what we want to see from a commission. And the president and the ministers in a security cluster. I've been there, I know how it works. And if the police carry this out without that kind of instruction, then what are they guilty of in terms of the way they dealt with that situation? You see, heads need to roll at a very high level. And we don't want to see a commission of inquiry that whitewashes things, that keeps the lid on, that in the end will apportion blame to the strikers, to the union splits, to the mine owners, and so on. What about the politicians who are the ones responsible?
Ayakata
Gil Scott Heron sang about South Africa back in the bad old days of '75. He told us about the brothers working underground when the beast they called apartheid was still alive. But out in the platinum belt, some things don't seem to change. Out on strike one day in the August heat, the miners stood in horror on the picket line with 34 stone-dead comrades at their feet. In Marikana, the miners stood their ground in Marikana. Policemen shot them down. Well, the mining bosses didn't want to hear demands of AMCU recognition and better pay. They told the police they could do just what they like, as long as they pushed that picket line away. Where is the justice? And where's equality? If you got no right to strike, you ain't got no liberty. In Marikana, the miners stood their ground in Marikana. Policemen shot them down. Marikana.